Tensions and testing times in Turkey. Anger over plans to develop a city park escalate into nationwide protests against the government. But will they tarnish Turkey's image as a model for the melding of Islam and democracy? This is Inside Story. Hello, welcome to the programme. I'm Jane Dutton. It started as a protest over a park, but plans to redevelop a public open space in Istanbul have sparked wider civil unrest in Turkey. Tens of thousands have joined nationwide protests directed at the government. Dozens of demonstrations have taken place in 48 cities across the country. Rights groups have accused police of being excessively heavy-handed. They say 2 people have been killed and more than 1,000 injured, although this hasn't been confirmed. Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan has admitted mistakes were made, but he's also accusing opponents of using Friday's initial protest over the park to stir up wider unrest.
Those who could not succeed in elections and those who know they will never do. I'm referring to the main opposition party and its allies. They have been provoking these demonstrations in a hopeless way. They are talking about a shopping center. What we are referring to is not a usual shopping center. You can't build it there. There hasn't been a decision for this center. Maybe we will build a city museum there or a venue for different activities. Have you got any documents about what will be built there? No, but they bring people to protest anyway.
Protests that have now taken on a broader dimension. Many of those demonstrating accuse the government of trying to take away some of their personal freedoms and of trying to make the predominantly Muslim but staunchly secular country more conservative. They're opposed to what they see as a crackdown on dissent and on the media, to new legislation restricting the sale and advertising of alcohol, and to Erdogan's support for rebel fighters in Syria. Raya Rage reports now for Inside Story from Istanbul.
Prime Minister Erdogan remained quite defiant in 2 different speeches today. He insisted that his government will go ahead with its urban development plans here for Taksim Square. While he said the fate of the park is still not clear if a shopping mall will be built, this construction that you can see will continue. He insisted that that dark building, the Ataturk Cultural Center and Opera House, will be demolished, and he insisted that he will go ahead with a controversial plan to build a mosque here. He will not be taking the permission, he said, from the opposition or those that he described as looters. These kind of remarks are likely going to anger people further, and they have a strong possibility of drawing more crowds onto the streets. The opposition party, the largest opposition party, has said the Prime Minister must issue an apology for the way the government has been behaving. The Prime Minister is accusing the opposition, of course, of using this as an opportunity to hijack the protests, saying that this is a sign of desperation. But the head of the largest opposition party insists that they're not being opportunists, that when they came here, they did not bring their flags. It has to be said that we are witnessing some sort of a change or a transformation in the nature of the crowd here. We are seeing more organized groups and banners and flags of smaller opposition parties, which would indicate a change of this protest from a rather organic and spontaneous protest to something more organized.
Let's bring in our guests. In Istanbul, Mustafa Akyol, a columnist for the leading Turkish newspaper, Hurriyet Daily News. In our London studios, Fadi Hakura, an associate fellow at Chatham House and a Turkey specialist. Also joining us from Istanbul is Genghis Temel, one of the many thousands who've been protesting. Mr. Temel, let's start off with you. Thanks for leaving your protest position to join us. If you can update us on this situation. We hear that troubles have broken out again the use of water cannon and tear gas. What's happening?
Actually, it has just started 2 days ago. One day, the municipality started, without sharing any information with the public, they started tearing down the Taksim Gezi Park. And the people, the protesters, are starting to protect their park because this is our normal right to protect our right. Nobody share any information with us. And after the disproportioned, and one night, 5 o'clock in the morning, with the disproportionate violence of the police attack, the protests are start and spreading all around Istanbul. The protests in Istanbul and all around Turkey are about the oppressive and uncompromising rule of Prime Minister. He has been in power for a decade now, and he's increasingly showing disrespect for the wishes and lifestyle of 50% that did not vote for him. Even today, he's continuing his dangerous horseplay and not compromising on our most peaceful wishes. Instead, he's provoking the society by saying that he will tear down the Atatürk Cultural Center, the symbol of art and culture in Istanbul, and building a mosque there. We are not saying that you can do this or you can't do this. We just want him to listen us a little bit.
But clearly, he's not going to listen to you. If you listen to what he said in his speech, he's accusing you of being nothing more than looters and somebody, or a group that's been set up by the opposition. Is there any truth in that?
This has nothing to do with the opposition parties. We are not related with any opposition parties. We are not the fan of the or members of any opposition parties. Controversially, we are calling from the social media to the parties that don't come to the Taksim Square. This is a free people's movement. It is not the political movement. We only want to ruling party to listen us and to be our party also, not only the other 50% party.
Mr. Akyol, what are you writing about what's going on at the moment, and are you allowed to write what you want?
Sure, I do write what I want. Here's what I think. Erdogan is a democratically elected leader. That's for sure. He's popular. 50% of the society supports him, and there's no doubt about that. However, he has been too defiant, too threatening to the people who do not support him. I mean, just by his language. And in the past few months, especially by his new regulations on alcohol use, limitation of alcohol use, by his words against people who drink alcohol, by naming a bridge over after a controversial Ottoman Sultan, he just flamed the culture war that is in this country. So he's legitimate there, but he's not acting he's democratically legitimate, but he's not acting very liberal and not very participatory. I think he should take a lesson from this incident and move on and to try to listen to those who don't agree with him. He has a mandate, he's legitimate, but democracy is not just about the ballots. So he should be able to build consensus. Instead of just declaring that there will be some construction in Taksim, maybe he should open up a website and ask the opinions of the people in Taksim. So it would be far-fetched to compare this to the Arab Spring, where people protested and rallied against dictatorial governments. Erdogan is a democratically legitimate elected leader, but Turkey needs a better democracy, which is participatory, which is more liberal, where you have more respect for freedom of speech. And particularly for this incident of two days, Erdogan needs an apology to all those people who have been gassed by the police. Yes, some of the protesters went also into looting, and they were violent too. But initially, it began as brutal police violence on people who didn't deserve it. And there, I think Erdogan needs to take a lesson from this. However, I should say, in the past two speeches he had, he backs down a little bit, but he still keeps defiant. And if this goes on, the protests will go on. And I think the political tension in the country will only be worse in the upcoming weeks and months.
Mr. Hakura, what do you make of the political tensions at the moment and how Erdogan has decided to respond to what's happening on the streets?
I think Prime Minister Erdogan has responded in a very, very confrontational way, and that's traditional in Turkish politics. Unfortunately, Turkish politics is very based on confrontation, it's based on honor and pride, and I think that's never healthy for a dialogue within a party and between parties. What really needs to happen is for Prime Minister Erdogan to step back, not to see this as a test of his honor and will, and try to adopt a more conciliatory approach to bring these protests to a peaceful conclusion.
We did obviously try to get some sort of comment from the government, but we didn't have any luck, because obviously it would have been good to hear why they have been taking this action which is happening again on the streets, particularly in Ankara as we speak. Now let's take a closer look at the man who is at the centre of all of this, and that is, of course, the Turkish Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan. He was elected Prime Minister in 2003 as leader of the AK Party, which has its roots in political Islam. Throughout much of the next decade, he steered the country through a period of strong economic growth. He also improved Turkey's international stature, both regionally and globally. His AK Party was elected to a third term in 2011. But in recent years, Erdogan's government has faced growing accusations of authoritarian rule and so-called Islamization. Critics cite the intimidation of journalists and laws restricting alcohol and banning kissing in public. Hints that Erdogan may be looking to change the constitution to allow him to run for another term have strengthened that position. Akol, you say he was democratically elected, which of course is indeed true, but he's very reluctant to apologise. Do you think that he's frightened that once he apologises that this might start some sort of trend that he's not able to stop, that he might lose control?
I think so. As Fadi Al-Kura said, part of the problem is the Turkish political culture, and all parties in this conflict, Erdogan and the other people and the opposition as well, they try to remain confrontational, threatening, defiant, and other parties are actually not better than Erdogan really on this. But he's the prime minister and he's the one who is responsible. Some names in his party, like the Istanbul mayor and the second man of AKP, the government after Erdogan, Bülent Arınç, they said it was a big mistake. We take lessons from the mistakes we've made. But Erdogan didn't say that, and that's not going to help. But I should also add, some of the things he doesn't get translated exactly. For example, in Taksim, he said he will demolish the Ataturk Cultural Center, not to build a mosque in its place, but to build a better opera house with a more modern architecture. So there's also this deep suspicion about whatever he does. He perhaps doesn't want to impose his values every time, but everything he does also gets translated by the opposition in that light. So there's this deep suspicion, also conspiratorial theories about Erdogan and his mission and his future vision.
But ultimately,
right now in
like
Turkey, he's the one who's responsible.
Sure. Does this feel like a democracy to you, Temel, the sort of heavy-handed response that you've had to your expressing the way you're feeling, your expression of disquiet?
Actually, I mean, there is no other way to hear your voice. There's no other way to tell people about what you feel and what you want, because unfortunately, even Turkish media is under control by the government. By the with many way of controlling media. You cannot hear any oppositional ideas or news in the Turkish media, unfortunately. That's why this was the only way to people come to the streets, go out to the streets and fighting till the morning against police. And the only people...
Have you been aware of what's happening in the country? I mean, do you feel that the coverage has been succinct enough, or have you had to look elsewhere to find out what really is going on?
Actually, if you check the Turkish media, you cannot see that. Only in the social media you can see this what's going on in the country, and people are informing each other from the social media. But even today, our Prime Minister just called social media as a social evil. He said Twitter is an evil and troublemaker. So this is the only way that how we communicate in Turkey at the moment.
Hakura, is this the start of something slightly bigger? We've already had the possibility of an Arab Spring being negated. But if there is this growing discontent in the country, is there a place for it? Because there's certainly no opposition to talk of, is there?
There's no doubt, you're absolutely right. There is no effective opposition in Turkey. And also you have this unfortunate dimension of confrontational politics dominating Turkey. At the same time, there's very little intra-party democracy in Turkey. For example, each party leader has the right to nominate each and every candidate to any election, has the right to impose any rules in the party, to change the party constitution at will, and that really restricts the avenues for protest and for dissidents in Turkey, and therefore it makes the likelihood of street protests that much more likely.
Do you think these street protests and Erdogan's response to the violence will benefit the opposition if they are able to get their act together and take advantage of this?
I think that given the way that Turkish society is structured, the way that there's this dichotomy between where 2/3 of Turkish society is more on the conservative and nationalist wing of the political spectrum, and around less than 1/3 are on the liberal and secular side of the political spectrum. I still think that Prime Minister Erdogan, provided he's able to maintain a prosperous growing economy, will still be able to win a large majority of votes in whether it's presidential elections or general parliamentary elections.
Akyol, has he failed to balance economic growth with political reform?
Well, he still has a huge support. I don't think that yesterday's event created a big loss in his votes. I mean, thousands were on the streets, but millions who support Erdogan were in their homes and they tweeted, supporting him. So it is a very divided society, and Erdogan's success partly comes from his pragmatism. It's an economic success story. Turkey has become a better place to live, I mean, by all technical modern standards.
But just not if you're a journalist.
Especially in the past few years.
Has the highest figure of prolonged detention of journalists than in any other country in the world.
Well, yes, I said it's become a better place because if you look at the 90s, you would see generals having death squads to kill journalists they didn't like. So we are coming from a very nasty past. And when you look at the whole 10 years of the AKP, whole decade of the AKP, there are many liberal reforms the government has done and which was praised by the European Union. That's why Turkey initiated a European Union accession process. They even brought a new amendment to the anti-terrorism law, which was the reason why many journalists were put in jail for writing articles that seemed to support some terrorist groups, which was wrong, of course, but they brought an amendment which will even change that. So there are things to support, there are reasons to say the AKP has done a good job in the past 10 years. But in the past few years, in their third term, as they get more self-confident, if not arrogant, they have started to assert cultural values, and that's where things started to go. Some opponents of Erdogan are actually hardcore nationalists who opposes deal with the PKK, and we shouldn't also see all opponents as liberal people. But also liberals started to get frustrated because Erdogan's cultural conservatism and the way he talks about alcohol and the way he puts religious symbols in the public square too much. So if he learns a lesson from this incident and he tries to become more reconciliatory, he can keep on being a successful political figure in Turkish history, and there's every reason to think that he will win the next elections as well by looking at current trends.
Sure.
But
okay, let's pick up on alcohol.
Having the current track,
Temel,
it will be controversial.
Is alcohol a problem in Turkey? I mean, is this what's driving the protests?
Yeah, one of the issues, because it's like filling the glass with the water. Maybe it's the last drop of the water. So lots of things happening, and in last 2 weeks, this alcohol rules, this Taksim issues, and everything. So people are worrying about their freedoms for the future. What kind of country is going to be? People are thinking that this is going to be an empire of fear.
I mean, he's fiddling in everything, isn't he? I mean, he's even encouraging you to have 3 children per family. You're no longer allowed to kiss in public. What's next?
I don't know. What's next? That's why we are on the streets. We don't know what's going to be next. And that's why we're worrying about that. What's going to be next? Nobody knows the question. Nobody knows the answer. What's going to be next?
Hakura, how do you think the Syrian government is viewing this, or what sort of impact do you think this could have on relations between the two? Because the Syrian government spoke out against this very gleefully, saying that Erdogan should stop this heavy-handed approach and that if he doesn't resolve it peacefully, he needs to step down.
Naturally, there is no comparison between what happened in Taksim Square yesterday and what's going on in Syria. I mean, there's absolutely no comparison. Nevertheless, it's unfortunate that the scenes, that the heavy-handed police action in Taksim Square that was broadcast around the world does give a negative image of Turkey and the Turkish government's attempts at projecting that Turkey is moving towards a more democratic system of government, does give a very negative image and does detract from Turkey's ability to influence developments in Syria.
Tamil, who is responsible for burning cars and for throwing stones at police if you say that this has all just been a peaceful protest on your behalf?
Of course, I mean, in the last 2 days, we've been faced with very disproportionate violence by the police. I mean, since yesterday, maybe 6 or 7 times I've been...
yes, but the police weren't burning the cars, were they?
Tear-gassed and, yes, with the tear gas, water cannons, and verbally assaulting. I mean, with so many, I've seen lots of people injured on the streets. I mean, the people from the hospitals, new doctors, young doctors, they came to the city center. They opened their in the apartment basements. They opened their kind of clinics and trying to help the people. But there is a disproportionate violence, and this gets the nervous up. Actually, people become more nervous when they face with the disproportionate violence by the police. People get more angry. So that's the reason why the anger is increasing all the time in Turkey. If someone
wouldn't an apology
like
be
Bülent
enough
Arınç
for you?
today,
Would you be satisfied with that, or would you rather support dialogue?
I was just going to say that actually today Bülent Arınç said that, also the mayor said that they accept that there was a mistake here, how they managed this crisis. Somebody should come and apologize from this public, from these people. If there was a really apologize, and if somebody will say that, okay guys, okay people, we are going to listen you, we're going to take your ideas about that, I'm sure all these people who are protesting Prime Minister today, tomorrow is going to support him. This is so easy. This is so simple. Why people should take their life into the risk and go onto the streets, fight till 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning? Why people should say that? We are not Arab Spring. We are not an Arabic country. This is Turkey. We have some kind of a democracy. It's not 100% democracy. It's developing. It's going to be much better, I'm sure. But we are not an Arabic country. We only want our voice to be listened by government. That's the only thing.
Now, we've had plenty of reaction to this topic on Facebook. Amin Zahin tells us Erdogan is a great leader. Turkey should be proud of him. Yahya Dilla says secularism forced on a population is fine, yet when the population vote for slightly more Islamic representation, it is not. Democracy and freedom are only acceptable within the restrictions set by the secularists, even though they may be a minority. Ayse Turan goes on, 3 years ago, half of Turkey voted for Erdogan. If you don't like him, there is an election in 2 years. Give your response on election day. And Inoshka Martinez adds, Turkey needs to go back to what Ataturk established a long time ago, a secular government, separation of mosque and state. Ekol, are we going to see growing divisions between the Turks themselves because of this?
Well, I think those who refer to Ataturk as the ideal model for Turkey are wrong. I mean, Ataturk's secularism was an illiberal secularism, which also brought many bans, like bans on the headscarf. We just should not reverse that today and then have bans on a secular lifestyle. And in principle, AKP agrees with that. But Erdogan has this sudden outburst of his moral conservatism, which is really hurting people. I very much agree with what Cengiz says. He sounds very reasonable. And I think the protesters who think like that are 100% right. And the way is to move forward. Turkey is a democracy, but it is not liberal enough. We don't have enough guarantees for freedom of speech. One of the controversial issues which make people frustrated with Erdogan government is the continuous manipulation of the media by the government. The media is still free by and large.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to stop you there. My apologies, but we have run out of time. Thanks very much to my guests, Mustafa Akyol, Fadi Hakura and Cengiz Temel, and thank you, of course, for joining us. Don't forget you can find this story and many more at aljazeera.com. Just click on programs and Inside Story, and why not leave us your feedback there as well. Goodbye for now.